The house smelled like lies dressed up in lavender. Welcome back to Wives Gone Wild. We appreciate you. What spot are you in today? We're curious where these stories find you. Here's today's tale. I'm Jack, and I used to think silence kept the peace, until it made me invisible. I stepped through the front door, my tie halfway undone, the day still clinging to my shoulders like static. 12 hours of corporate nonsense, back-to-back meetings, and a lunch that tasted like cardboard. All I wanted was a cold drink, maybe 5 minutes to myself. Instead, I walked into the scent of Marissa's lavender candles, her go-to whenever she wanted to reset the vibe. But I knew better. Lavender meant she'd done something and didn't want to talk about it. Not yet. The keys clinked as I dropped them on the counter. Then I saw it. A white rectangle, clean and crisp, centered perfectly on the granite like it was part of the decor. But this wasn't a welcome home note. It was a receipt. A long one. $1,500. At first, I thought it had to be a mistake. But no. There it was, dead center in bold ink, like a slap across the face. The logo on top made it worse. Le Seraphine. That ritzy French place downtown. The one with the 22-page wine list, and waiters who make you feel like you're trespassing if you mispronounce confit. I hadn't been there in over a year. Not with Marissa. Not with anyone. I held it up slowly, letting the number register as my fingers brushed across the smooth paper. That's when I noticed her. Marissa, leaning against the kitchen island in her favorite silk robe, glass of red wine in hand, looking like a magazine ad for effortlessly elegant. She didn't even flinch. "What's this?" I asked, my voice calm, but it had an edge even I hadn't planned. She didn't look at me, just swirled the wine and said, "It's just one dinner. Don't be petty. Just one dinner." Like it was a soda run. Before I could respond, Talia's voice floated in from the living room. She was sprawled on the couch like she owned it, thumbs busy on her phone. "Yeah," she added, not even bothering to look up. It was a family celebration. Family celebration. No text. No invite. No heads up. But the bill? That showed up right on time, on my kitchen counter, tied to my card, in my name. I looked at both of them. Marissa with her wine, Talia with her fake innocent tone. Neither of them flinched. They expected me to nod, to pay, to move on. Like always. I was the guy who covered the streaming services they binged on. The guy who picked up the tab for their late-night sushi orders. The guy who smiled through it all because I believed in us. In family. But this wasn't dinner. This was a message. A big, fat, French cuisine-coated insult with a side of disrespect. And I wasn't swallowing it. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't stomp around. Instead, something inside me shifted. My jaw tightened. My spine straightened. And a strange calm settled over me. This wasn't about food. It was about being forgotten. Replaced. Used. And I just found my receipt. She didn't know it yet. Neither did her sister. But this was the beginning of something they wouldn't forget. Not ever. Would you have said something right then? Or played it cool like I did? Stick around. It only gets wilder from here. "Oh, you want to see petty?" That's what I said. But what I meant was, "You've been playing with fire, and now I'm holding the matchbook." Marissa froze mid-sip. The stem of her wine glass paused just below her lips. Talia finally looked up from her phone, head tilted like she wasn't sure if she'd heard me right. Neither of them spoke. Neither had to. The shift in the room was already thick enough to choke on. I didn't wait for a reaction. I slipped the receipt into my pocket, walked calmly to the fridge, and pulled out a beer. Cracked it open with a steady hand and leaned against the counter like we were just talking about the weather. Inside, my mind was pacing like a caged animal. $1,500 wasn't just overpriced seafood and ego wine. It was a neon flare in the dark, pointing straight at a line I didn't know we'd crossed. Until now. I took a slow sip, watching both of them. Marissa's wine glass was back on the counter, but her hand hovered nearby, like she was bracing for impact. Talia had returned to scrolling, but her fingers moved slower now, like she was trying to look unbothered while her brain caught up. They were waiting for me to lose it. Yell. Slam a door. Make it easy for them to spin the story into Jack's being dramatic again. But I wasn't playing that role anymore. I stayed quiet. Let them talk. They shifted back to their usual chatter. Talia's new job, some reality show they'd been binging, weekend plans. The usual noise. But I wasn't really hearing it. I was staring past them, into a mental image I couldn't shake. Them at Le Seraphine. Laughing. Toasting. Maybe even clinking glasses over the fact that I was too busy, too tired, or too trusting to question a charge like that. They didn't just expect me to pick up the bill. They counted on me not asking. And honestly, that's what stung the most. It wasn't just betrayal, it was boredom. They assumed I was too passive to notice, that I'd shrug and say, "No big deal, just a dinner." Like I was an extra in their lives instead of a partner in mine. And maybe, for a while, I had been. The guy who didn't question late-night outings. Who ignored the way Talia's sleepovers turned into unpaid residencies. Who paid for emergencies that somehow always looked like spa days and online shopping carts. But now that guy, he was gone. This wasn't an oversight. It was a pattern, a test. And they were about to find out what happens when I stop failing it. The rest of the evening, I kept my smile polite, my tone steady. I nodded in the right places, let their conversation flow around me like background noise. But my focus was locked in. Every sip of that beer was another moment of planning. Every breath I took was measured, controlled, because I knew something they didn't. That receipt wasn't the end. It was a spark. A fuse had been lit, and they didn't even smell the smoke yet. Let them think I was over it. Let them keep laughing. They had no idea the quiet man they walked over was about to rise, calm, cold, and carrying every receipt they'd ever hoped I'd ignore. What would you do? Burn it down, or let them twist the knife a little longer? Let's see how far this dinner tab really stretches. The thing about betrayal is, it echoes. Long after the moment passes, you keep hearing it in the silence. The next morning, that $1,500 receipt was still in my pocket, folded like a secret I couldn't forget. Marissa was already gone, probably at yoga or brunch with Talia, like nothing had happened. Meanwhile, I sat alone at the kitchen table, nursing black coffee and an unease I couldn't shake. I stared at the spot where the receipt had been, right there on the counter like a challenge. I wasn't going to let it slide. Not this time. I needed answers. Who else was at that dinner? Why wasn't I told? And more importantly, how long had they been treating me like I was just the man who signs the checks? So I did what any reasonable man would do when the world starts feeling sideways. I started digging. Not loud. Not messy. Just methodical. Like I was assembling a puzzle they didn't know I'd found. First stop? Neil. We'd been friends for years. Thursday night poker, trash talk over wings. The kind of guy who always saw through the smoke. I texted him. Asked if he was down for breakfast at the diner near the office. He didn't ask questions. Just said, "Be there." When I slid into the booth across from him, he was already halfway through eggs and hash browns. The air smelled like grease and burnt coffee. Comfort food for the uncomfortable truth I was about to drop. I pulled the receipt from my pocket, laid it on the table like a card in our weekly game. "Take a look," I said. He wiped his hands on a napkin, picked it up, and let out a low whistle. "Lou Seraphine? Dude, that's not dinner. That's a car note." I nodded, took a slow sip of coffee, and told him everything. How I wasn't invited, how Marissa and Talia shrugged it off like I was being unreasonable. His expression hardened. He leaned back, arms crossed, eyes locked on mine. "That's not petty," he said. "That's war." And there it was again. That word. War. It hit different hearing it from someone who didn't live in my house, who hadn't watched this unfold in slow motion. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about what they thought they could get away with. Neil asked the obvious question. What were they celebrating? I didn't have an answer. Yet. But I would. And I wouldn't have to wait long. That afternoon, I got lucky. A text lit up my phone. Gina, Talia's girlfriend. The only one in their orbit who treated me like a human being, not a vending machine. Her message was short. Heard about the dinner. You okay? I didn't text back. I called. She picked up on the second ring. Voice low like she was already risking something. "I figured you'd want the real story," she said. And she was right. Turns out, it wasn't just a girls' night. It was a full-blown celebration for Talia's promotion. Some high-profile corporate gig she'd been angling for. Marissa had planned the whole thing. Booked the private room. Ordered 3 bottles of vintage wine. Rolled out appetizers like it was royalty, and even paid to Uber in half the family. On my card. My absence wasn't an oversight. It was by design. I leaned against the kitchen counter as Gina spoke, hand gripping the edge like it could anchor me. When I asked why I wasn't there, Gina hesitated, then said it. "Marissa told everyone it was girls only. Said you were always too busy anyway. That you wouldn't care. Wouldn't care. Like I was just furniture. Like I wouldn't have shown up." Toasted Talia's win. maybe even picked up the tab if I'd been asked. But no, they laughed about it later, Gina said. Joked that I'd pay without blinking. Talia thought it was hilarious. I didn't laugh. I thanked Gina for the truth. Asked her to keep it between us. Hung up the phone with a grip so tight, I almost cracked the case. A family dinner. A celebration. On my dime. Without my name. That's not just betrayal. That's erasure. And it was only the beginning. They thought the receipt was the whole story. But it was just my first clue. And I was about to turn it into a trail. The truth doesn't just sting, it spreads. By the time Gina hung up, I was already moving. The living room lights were off, but my thoughts were lit up like a crime board. That dinner wasn't a one-off. It was a signal. And if they thought I wouldn't trace it back, they were about to find out just how wrong they were. I poured another cup of coffee, stronger this time, sat at the kitchen table, and opened my laptop. Pulled up our joint credit card account, something I used to glance at once a month without a second thought. But now, I was scanning every line like it had a confession to make. The $1,500 charge at Le Seraphine was just the latest entry. There were others, smaller, sneakier, each one filed under vague names. Home needs, miscellaneous, lifestyle. Charges that didn't raise flags at first glance. But now, every line looked like a breadcrumb. $200 here, $300 there. A $480 charge labeled wellness bundle. Really? I started scrolling back through 6 months of statements. Grocery totals that didn't match the fridge. Gas charges from cities we hadn't driven to. And then came the kicker. $8,000 labeled under household categories I couldn't connect to a single thing in this house. No new furniture. No renovations. That leaky faucet in the kitchen? Still leaking. The couch? Same saggy one we got from her cousin's garage sale. So where was the money going? I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but my gut already had. I needed backup. Someone who could see past the surface and into the structure. Someone who knew how to follow the money. So I called Carlos. We went to college together. He's the guy you call when your math doesn't math. Works in accounting now, runs a small office downtown. Sharp eyes, zero fluff, and a gift for sniffing out financial skeletons. He picked up on the second ring. I've got a job, I said. He paused, then said, You sound like someone who just saw something they can't unsee. $8,000 labeled as home stuff, I said. And my faucet's still broken. Bring the files, he said. I'll stay late. I showed up an hour later with a printed stack of statements and a head full of steam. His office smelled like dust and old coffee filters. Files piled high. One dying plant in the window. Carlos barely looked up, just motioned for me to sit. What do you see? I asked, sliding the papers across the desk. He adjusted his glasses, started scanning, and frowned almost immediately. This ain't right, he muttered. No way you burn through $8,000 on house stuff without seeing it in the house. He started digging, faster than I expected, cross-referencing vendor names, tracking dates, looking for patterns. My hands were clenched into fists in my lap as he clicked and muttered and raised an eyebrow. Then he stopped. This is deliberate, he said, his voice flat. She's been moving money in small transfers. Quiet ones. Spread out so they don't trigger alerts. Where to? He turned the screen so I could see. A savings account. One I didn't recognize. Account name. Girls only. Bali 2025. My heart dropped. Carlos kept clicking. Looks like she's been skimming little by little for months. Couple hundred here, $350 there. Disguised just well enough to stay under the radar. A vacation fund. Hidden in plain sight. Booked in her name. Not ours. Just hers. Just like that dinner. Just like everything else. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, and let it hit. She'd been sitting across from me at dinner. Sleeping next to me. Laughing in the kitchen while funneling cash behind my back for a girl's trip I'd never been told about. And Talia? Yeah, she had her fingerprints on it too. Carlos leaned back, arms crossed. You want me to keep digging? No, I said. This is enough. For now. I gathered the statements, thanked him, and stepped out into the night. The air was cool, but my skin was burning. Not with rage, but clarity. This wasn't about one meal. It wasn't even about the money anymore. It was about the planning. The secret calendar I wasn't on. The side account. The Bali dream built on my blind spots. They weren't sloppy. They were calculated. And they'd been playing the long game. I was done being a ghost sponsor in someone else's vacation fantasy. This wasn't a red flag. It was a red flare. And I wasn't looking away anymore. Some people rage loud. I rage in silence. and start rearranging the chessboard. The morning after Carlos uncovered the Bali account, I woke up early. Marissa was still asleep upstairs, wrapped in the sheets like nothing had changed. But for me, everything had. The plan was already forming. I poured my coffee, black and bitter, and paced the living room barefoot, the hardwood cold beneath my steps. Each click of my heel on the floor echoed louder than any argument could. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to demand answers or explanations that would be twisted into apologies with expiration dates. I was going to move. Quiet, precise, and irreversible. First, the credit cards. I called the bank before 8 a.m. spoke softly, like I was just checking a balance, but my voice didn't shake. Yes, I said. I need to freeze the joint credit cards. All of them. The woman on the line paused. All of them, sir? Yes, I repeated. Effective immediately. She asked a few security questions, then confirmed the freeze. I thanked her, hung up, and took my first deep breath in days. Next move? That $1,500 dinner. I pulled up the charge on our statement and flagged it for dispute. Told the bank it was unauthorized. Which, let's be honest, it was. They said the process would take a few days. That was fine. I wasn't trying to rush revenge. I was building a case they couldn't weasel out of. Then came the savings account. The joint one. The one I had faithfully contributed to for years, assuming it was ours. A safety net for rainy days, or maybe even a dream vacation together. Turns out, while I was stacking it, she was siphoning from it like it was her private Bali piggy bank. I logged in and stared at the number. $22,000. I didn't hesitate. Transferred half, $11,000, into my personal account, one that only had my name on it. The bank flagged the move for verification, and I confirmed it with a single tap. It felt clean. Not angry. Not vindictive. Just mine. I wasn't draining it. I was reclaiming my half. The part one earned while she played pretend with lavender candles and secret wine nights. Then came Talia. She'd been using an extra credit card tied to our account, something I'd handed over when her car broke down 2 years ago. A temporary solution that quietly became permanent. Emergencies, she'd said. Well, I'd seen enough of her definition of emergencies to last a lifetime. I called the bank again. I'd like to cancel the authorized user card ending in 7724. The woman asked if I was sure. I didn't blink. Dead sure. Click. Done. Talia's lifeline. Cut. By mid-morning, my moves were locked in. The money shifted. The accounts frozen. The lines redrawn. They'd find out soon enough. Probably at a nail salon, or while buying overpriced salads they'd assumed I'd cover. I poured another cup of coffee and waited. Watched the clock like it was a fuse. And sure enough, around noon, my phone buzzed. Marissa, what the hell did you do? My card's not working. I let the message sit for a beat. Then replied. Me, fraud alert. Bank's handling it. Talk later. Vague. Chilling. Perfect. Seconds later, Talia, did you cancel my card? I'm stranded at the mall. Stranded. Like a grown woman with a full-time job and no shame. Mia, no more emergencies on my dime. Figure it out. Then I turned off my phone, placed it face down on the kitchen counter, and went back to my day. Let them panic. Let them rage. I wasn't picking up. Not today. I wasn't being petty. I was finally being exact. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. Some people break dishes when they're mad. Marissa slams cabinet doors like she's rehearsing for a kitchen-themed opera. The moment she stormed downstairs, her slippers hitting each step like warning shots, I knew the bank alerts had landed. She didn't say good morning, just flung open every cabinet in sight, metal clinking, jars rattling, each slam louder than the last. I sat at the table, calmly plating my eggs. No rush. Let her make noise. Let her fill the room with fury. You gonna talk? I asked, taking a bite. Or just break the kitchen? She spun around, eyes blazing, a spoon clutched like a dagger. You're vindictive, she snapped. Freezing the cards? Canceling Talia's? Over one stupid dinner? That's low, even for you. I chewed slowly. Swallowed. Shrugged. It's just money, I said, tossing her own words back like a mirror. Don't be petty. That hit harder than I expected. Her face flushed red, her lips parted like she wanted to scream, but nothing came out. She slammed the spoon on the counter, muttered something under her breath, and stormed back upstairs with her coffee in tow. Another cabinet door slammed for good measure. I rinsed my plate, dried it, and checked my phone. The storm was spreading. Talia had posted a story on Instagram, of course. Her favorite battlefield. Eyes wide, voice dripping with fake hurt, playing victim for her curated audience. Real men support their queens, she said into the camera. Some people can't handle strong family energy, so they pull petty stunts. Petty stunts. There it was again. She didn't say my name, but she didn't need to. I saved the story. Didn't react. Just filed it under Exhibits A through Z. Let her cry into filters and hashtags. I wasn't chasing clout. I was cleaning house. By noon, the noise had spilled past Instagram. My phone buzzed again, Marissa's mom. A text storm. Paragraphs long. The kind of message that made you scroll just to see the end. Words like provider, husband, and family expectations peppered the guilt trip. She said I was tearing the family apart over a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. Like Bali, the handbags, the dinner, all of it, were just misplaced receipts. I didn't reply, just took a screenshot and added it to the file. Facts over feelings. Marissa stayed upstairs most of the day. The quiet felt strange at first, unnatural. But as the hours passed, it turned peaceful. I worked in the garage, tightened a loose hinge on the back gate, took control of the spaces she used to dominate with her presence. Then, just before sunset, she reappeared. Duffel bag over her shoulder. No eye contact. I'm going to Talia's, she said flatly. I need to cool off. I nodded from the kitchen, arms crossed. Take your time. She stood there, waiting, for what? I don't know. Maybe for me to chase her. Maybe to beg. I didn't move. Didn't flinch. She huffed, yanked the front door open, and left. The slam echoed longer than her footsteps. I stood still, staring at the quiet space she left behind. Not relief. Not yet. But something close. The lavender was fading, and all that remained was mine. The first rule of damage control? Control the story before someone else does. That night, the house was quiet, too quiet. The kind of silence that settles in after a storm, heavy with the sense that more is coming. I stretched out on the couch, beer in hand, and waited. It didn't take long. My phone lit up like a pinball machine. Not texts this time, notifications from the family group chat. The one Marissa always kept muted until she needed sympathy. And now, she'd opened the floodgates. First up, Marissa's mom. Again. But this time, she brought an audience. Her message was long, self-righteous, and soaked in passive aggression. A husband's job is to hold the family together, she wrote. Not blow it up over a dinner tab. I raised Marissa to expect better. Better than what? A husband who noticed? Then came Derek, Marissa's cousin. The guy who thinks being related gives him license to weigh in on marriages he's never been part of. Bro, you're being emotionally immature, he wrote. Money comes and goes, but family's forever. Right, says the guy who still owes me $600 from a Vegas trip 2 years ago. Next up, Talia. All caps, of course. Some people can't handle success. Congrats on ruining a good thing. Ah, there it was. The guilt grenade. The suggestion that I destroyed something they had already hollowed out with entitlement and secret spending. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Instead, I opened another chat. One I'd started quietly the night before. Receipts and redemption. Just me, Neil, and Gina. I dropped screenshots. Marissa's mom's guilt fest. Derek's unsolicited wisdom. Talia's tantrum. All of it. Neil replied first. Holy hell. They're coming for you. Gina added. They're so mad you're not folding. Keep going. I grinned. Typed back. Let them blow up. I've got the receipts. And I did. Literal and otherwise. Let them shout in the group chat. Let them paint me as the villain. I wasn't giving them a reaction. They could all scream into the void together. I was done playing support character in their drama. That night, Gina sent me something else. A voice memo. Crackly, low volume, but clear enough. She'd recorded Talia. He thinks he can just cut me off? After everything we've done for him? Talia snapped. Marissa, tell mom to hit him harder. Then Marissa's voice, smooth as glass. He'll cave. He always does. Just keep pushing. I played it twice. Then a third time. Each word sharp as a pin. Done for him. Push harder? They still thought I'd fold. I saved the clip, sent it to receipts and redemption, and let it simmer there. The rage was theirs now. The noise, the posts, the pity parade. Me? I just watched it burn from a safe distance. Quiet, focused, steady. Let them keep yelling. I wasn't cracking. I was collecting. You should have seen it coming, Neil said, laughing as I explained my idea. You're gonna rent a room and PowerPoint them into oblivion? Exactly, I said, with receipts. Because at this point, silence wasn't enough. They'd mocked me behind my back, posted their version of events for strangers to clap at, whispered about how I'd cave. They were expecting a tantrum. Instead, they were about to get a presentation. The next morning, I got to work. Gina had tipped me off. Marissa and Talia were meeting for lunch at that cozy little cafe on Elm, the one with a private room in the back. I called ahead, booked it, and asked if they had a projector. They did. Perfect. I pulled an all-nighter crafting the slides, each one sharper than the last. The loose Seraphine receipt opened the deck. Then came the Bali fund transfers, the handbag charges, the ghost expenses labeled home needs, then the voice recordings, Talia's entitlement, Marissa's calm manipulation, all of it layered with timestamps, screenshots, bank records, and cold facts. I didn't want drama. I wanted documentation. The morning of the meetup, I ironed a shirt, printed hard copies of everything, and slid the divorce papers into a black folder, signed on my end, waiting on hers. Gina texted, "They're here." Marissa's on her third latte. Talia's whining about a chipped nail. Showtime. I walked into the cafe like I was just another customer. Calm, even smiling. I spotted their table. Marissa's eyes met mine mid-sip. She froze. Talia turned, face twisting like she smelled something bad. "What are you doing here?" Marissa asked. I held up the room key. "Lunch. Private room. Come join me." Then I turned and walked away. I didn't wait to see if they followed. But they did. Curiosity always wins. Inside the private room, the lights were low and the projector was ready. I clicked to the first slide as they stepped in. Marissa froze when she saw the receipt projected wall size. Lou Seraphine, $1,500. Dated. Time-stamped. "Let's start here," I said. "A dinner I didn't attend, but paid for." Talia crossed her arms. "This is ridiculous." I clicked to the next slide. "Is it? Because this is $8,000 labeled as home needs that somehow never made it into our home. Then the Bali fund. Then the handbags. Then the recordings. Their voices. Their laughter. Their assumptions." By the time I was done, the air in that little room had gone still. No one spoke. Even the hum of the projector felt loud. I reached into my folder and slid the papers across the table. Divorce. Terms are clear. Sign or don't. But this stops here. Marissa's hands trembled slightly as she picked them up. "You're ending our marriage over money?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. I shook my head. "I'm ending it over betrayal. Over the version of me you built in your head. Silent, spineless, and always willing to foot the bill. That guy's gone." I didn't wait for their response. I packed my laptop, left the folder, walked out. The cafe door swung shut behind me with a soft thud. The sun was bright, the air crisp. I took a breath, so deep it felt like the first one in months. I didn't raise my voice. I raised the truth, and I let it speak for itself. Freedom doesn't roar, it clicks, like a new deadbolt sliding into place. I got home from the cafe and didn't even take off my shoes. Just walked straight to the kitchen, set my laptop down, and called Soraya. She picked up on the first ring, sharp and calm as always. "How'd it go?" she asked. "Clean," I said. Didn't yell, didn't flinch. Left her with the truth and the papers. Soraya didn't congratulate me. She didn't need to. Just shifted gears. Good. Next step's the no contact clause. I'll prep the notice. If they reach out, forward everything. Don't reply. Simple. Direct. Like everything she did. I hung up and turned toward the front door. For years, that door had been a revolving one. Marissa stomping in, Talia waltzing through with takeout bags, and weekend luggage like this place came rent-free. Not anymore. I called a locksmith. Pete. Guy Neil had used before. He showed up within the hour, toolbox in hand and easy small talk on his lips. "Trouble with the missus?" he asked, half smirking. "Just updating access," I said. 15 minutes later, the locks were changed. 2 new keys. Only mine. I stood there alone, twisting the knob, feeling it catch, hearing it click. It was the softest sound I'd heard all week, and somehow the loudest. Next, I went to the bedroom. Marissa's closet was still half full. Her bags, her shoes, the handbags she swore were gifts or clearance deals. All of it lined up like trophies from a life I was no longer part of. I didn't rage, didn't trash anything, just folded, sorted, boxed it all with mechanical precision. Her shoes, her lotions, that lavender candle she lit to fake peace. It took hours. I didn't stop. By nightfall, the garage had 6 neatly packed boxes stacked by the door. I wrote one note. Just 6 words, scrawled on a sticky tab. Your things. No need to return. Soraya had already lined up a private courier. I called him, gave him the address. Talia's condo. He promised to deliver it first thing in the morning. When he pulled away the next day, I stood at the window and watched the last trace of her leave. I thought I'd feel emptier, but what I felt was space. Space to think. Space to move. Space to breathe without flinching. Marissa didn't call. Didn't text. Maybe Soraya's warning got through. Maybe she just needed time to figure out her next play. Either way, the silence stayed, and I let it. I spent the rest of that day cleaning. Deep cleaning. I tossed the wine glasses she liked, the monogrammed towels her sister gifted us, the throw blanket that always smelled like her perfume. The house started to shift, not just in sound or smell, but in ownership. Mine. That night, Neil stopped by with a 6-pack. We sat on the porch, the air crisp and quiet. You're a ghost to them now, he said, cracking open a beer. No contact. No chaos. No begging. I nodded. Took a sip. The lock clicked again behind me, and I smiled without meaning to. Marissa could rage at Talia's all she wanted. But this house, this life, it was finally mine. Starting over isn't some dramatic montage. It's quiet. Boring, even. But it's yours. The days after the boxes left were uneventful in the best way possible. No screaming texts. No guilt-tripping calls. Just the hum of appliances, the creak of clean floorboards, and the steady rhythm of my own breathing. I started rebuilding, not in some flashy, dramatic way. I didn't suddenly buy a motorcycle or get a new wardrobe. I just reclaimed my mornings. Coffee. Quiet. Control. The little things became rituals. I swapped out the bedding. Got rid of the throw pillows she obsessed over that always felt like decorations, not comfort. Rearranged the living room furniture, not to make it trendy, but to make it mine. Comfortable. Functional. Gina came by one afternoon to drop off a flash drive. More screenshots, more audio clips, in case Soraya needed to tighten the legal bolts. She stood in the doorway, blinking at the space like it was some kind of alternate reality. It feels clear in here, she said. It is, I told her. Finally, she gave a half smile. You holding up? I'm not just holding, I said. I'm building. And that was the truth. Work got better too. My focus returned. I started clocking out on time, eating actual lunches, and walking to the parking lot without my phone buzzing with some new Marissa-induced fire. I wasn't looking over my shoulder anymore. Just ahead. Neil and I resumed poker nights. We didn't talk about the divorce much, just cracked beers and threw down cards like we used to, before things got complicated. You look lighter, he said one night. I am, I replied. Less weight. Fewer vampires. But it wasn't just about cutting people out. It was about what came back in their absence. Music. I played old records again, stuff I hadn't touched since college because Marissa didn't like vinyl. Said it was dusty. I liked the dust. I liked the crackle between tracks. It sounded like time breathing. I opened the windows again. Let in real air instead of curated scents. No more lavender hiding lies. I even started writing again. Journaling. Nothing profound. Just thoughts, small reflections, fragments of peace. No audience. No performance. Just me. And slowly, I stopped feeling like I was recovering from something. I started feeling like I was becoming something. Not a better version of who I was before her. A whole new version. One that doesn't flinch at silence. One that sees the warning signs. One that doesn't pay for dinners he wasn't invited to. The comeback isn't loud. It's clean, steady, quiet, and it lasts. Closure doesn't knock, it pings. It was a Sunday morning. Sunlight through the blinds. Fresh coffee in my hand. The house still and warm, humming with peace I hadn't felt in years. That's when my phone buzzed. Marissa. The name lit up like a flare I hadn't seen in weeks. I stared at it for a moment, let it ring once, then twice. No panic, just curiosity. The way you'd watch an old firework fizzle out in daylight. It wasn't a call, just a message. 4 words. Can we talk soon? I didn't open it right away. Let it sit. Let it wait. Then, just beneath it, another ping. A photo. Her. Standing on a balcony somewhere warm. Hair curled, cocktail in hand. The caption? Bali bound, baby. So that's where the vacation fund went. The message that followed was even shorter. Hope you're doing okay. I smiled. Not with bitterness. Just the kind of smile you give to an old version of yourself you don't recognize anymore. She was still playing PR. Still living for the optics. Still mistaking silence for softness. Still assuming I was the man who'd see that photo and feel regret. Instead, I felt nothing. And in that nothing, freedom. I took a screenshot, out of habit, and dropped it into the receipts and redemption folder. Just in case. Then I opened the message. Typed 2 words. Doing great. Added a thumbs up emoji. Nothing more. Hit send. Then blocked the number. Not out of spite, but to make it final. The story she tried to spin was over. The character she miscast me as had walked off stage. And me? I had a whole new script. The kind where I don't bankroll betrayal. The kind where peace doesn't ask for permission. Some lessons come with a cost I'm still paying. But I'll never make change for someone else's lie again. What loss made you stronger? Drop your wild story below. And subscribe for more untamed tales. This is Wives Gone Wild. And sometimes, silence is the loudest goodbye.